Alright guys, old blue cord back again, and we've been talking about electrical problems with the car. This is part of the top five things you need to check on your new Honda Accord if you bought one new. The main relay. This item right here, and that's the make and model of it. I'm sure it's not in business anymore. There's how it's connected. It's got a reddish kind of funny look to it. There's the bracket. This is a relay for, really it's built in for safety, is to when you turn your ignition key on, it energizes an electric fuel pump. So Honda's using an electric fuel pump, and this relay and connector is what tells it. It says, hey, I see spark, go ahead and turn that as you're cranking the car over. Crank. It's saying, hey, I see spark, turn that fuel pump on. So I'm going to read the description to you, and then we'll go from there. And again, we're back in the Helms book. Helms gives probably the best explanation of how it works. So it's on page 1262, 1263. This is an 88 book. I noticed that some of the year books, the page numbers don't quite correlate, but it's in the fuel injection section of the book, and you just look up main relay in the index right there. It's also in the print, the electrical prints. So if you bring the book out open like that and go to the fuel injection diagram up here in the corner, I'll hold it still a second. It's right there dead in the middle if you want to look at the wire printout or whatever, for whatever reason. Please, and I've said this before, please don't just jump it out and keep going. I had a dear friend of mine, brother, die that way. I know you guys don't want to hear the story, but he figured out a way on an old crosser car to jump this out. It was giving him a fit. He was driving. He had a car accident. He burned up in that car. The fuel pump continued. It was a bad accident. He might have not lived, but the fuel pump continued to run. There was a fire. It closed casket. So let's just get that out of the... you can jump it to test it, but you're not going to drive it. Just buy one of these relays. They're still available. Now, there's a couple guys that said you can pull this apart and float the solder on them. That was probably good 20 years ago on dry contacts and crusty solder. But a relay is mechanical contacts that are going like this, ding, 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 ding. They wear out over time. No amount of flowing solder or shaking it or praying. Sometimes you can go in there and go like that, and it'll take off on you. Just get a new one. I've got a spare. There's some other Honda cars you can use, but you have to check the wiring printout because I think the wires are different. You could actually dead short your ECU if you're not careful. So, but anyway, please don't jump it out. So I'm going to read it. That's important. But I'm going to read the description to you so people understand. It's actually two relays in one. There's two separate relays that work together. So the main relay actually contains two individual relays. This relay is installed at the left side of the cowl, so it's on the left side of the car. One relay energizes when the ignition is on, which supplies the battery voltage to the ECU, power to the injectors, and power for the second relay. The second relay is energized for 2 seconds when the ignition switch is on and when the engine is running, which supplies power to the fuel pump. And that's important. So when you turn your ignition key on, you're going to hear this click. You're going to hear a distinctive click, unless you got your stereo blasting or whatever. And then if you don't do anything with starting, you're going to hear it go ding and click off within about 2 seconds. It's probably closer to 3 or 4. I don't know how they do that in there. It's something with diodes, but we can talk about that someday. But there's a little timer in there anyway. So you just got a few seconds to start your car. And then sometimes you'll see me, like I'll click. I'll prime my fuel pump because you can hold the key on. So if you leave your ignition key on, the fuel pump is not going to run forever. That's important to understand. I think that can be confusing to some people that haven't worked on a car. So main relay. It's on the left side of the car. We're going to stop for a second. We're going to jump in there and look at it. 12.6, 12.2. There's a really nice diagram how it works. There's also a troubleshooting with the pinouts if you wanted to. And you can kind of see the picture in there where it's trying to show you there's two, right, like I said, contacts right there, mechanical. So it's really kind of two separate relays. One triggers the other one, and that's what this is explaining. It can be a little confusing to some people. generally what'll happen, and then here's the troubleshooting. So it's not going to burn your car down, nothing's going to happen, you're just not going to be able to start it. You go to crank it, and it might fire for a split second, 5-10 seconds, because it's just squirting a little fuel gets squirted. But if the relays don't latch in, the fuel pump goes off, and it's going to keep doing that. And sometimes you can get away with running it, but this is a real common failure point for a long time. And I'd say every car you're going to buy, this has been replaced, because they just didn't last that long. Hopefully the newer ones remanufactured, whatever, are a little bit better. But that's something you need to look at. And what we'll do is we'll pause it here. We'll go underneath the car. I'll show you what it looks like so you kind of know. It's a little bit tricky to get out. It's kind of in a bad spot, but pretty easy to do. And I'll pause it right there. All right, we're back. So we're on the driver's side, steering wheel, door, driver's side. Now this is not the factory spot this is supposed to be in. It's supposed to be way, let's get in there, way up in there, and then bolted to the firewall. Now another thing that happens, and you can notice here I've got this pulled back, you'll start getting a water leak in these little corners right here, and that could get this wet. And if that gets wet, you're going to have some intermittent weird failure. So I've actually for like 30 years had down kind of basically just sitting there. It doesn't bother my dead pedal yet. It looks kind of hokey. And for a security feature, when I drove the car a lot, I would take this out and take it with me. So if I was leaving for a day to go somewhere and I had to park, like say at the airport or something, I would just take this and put this in my pocket. So that, unless somebody was super smart, knew how to jump this out, which I'm not saying somebody couldn't, you basically had like a little security feature pulled in. This is, like I said, my second one. I never tried the solder floating thing, never really thought it worked. I just went out and bought a new one. I assume this is a real Honda one. I can't remember, but that's where it is. It goes up in there. You're gonna have to stick your head up in there. There's not a lot of room in here. It sucks, but get a no start condition, no fuel pump. I've never heard anybody, never heard anybody like driving down the road and then it quits and then you're stuck. It's always starting. So that's kind of, I guess that's a good thing, because wherever you're at, you know, trying to start your car, you're not obviously going down, it's not going to fail on you going down the fast lane of, you know, I-95. I've never ever heard that happening, so it's pretty far down on the bottom of the list, obviously, and but it's the main relay. And really the last one I've got is just a real simple discussion about, and it's just stuff you need to check when you buy something new, is and it's simple too, is the radio. Because, you know, if some jackleg puts a radio in there, and a lot of guys, they just wire it straight to the battery, and they don't put a fuse in, or they put a giant, a 40 amp fuse in on a battery that pulls, or a radio that pulls 10 amps. That could cause you some problems. So anytime I get a car, and I've seen some, I helped a guy fix a really nice Camaro up, and we're driving it down the road, and it's great and everything, and the radio, it caught fire. It was not a good thing. Of course, it didn't have a fire extinguisher. Really, was car. I would recommend always. I don't always carry a fire extinguisher in the car, but it was a really sad story. It wasn't the greatest car in the world, but it was his, and we're going down the road, and it starts smoking, and it melted the main wire harness underneath the car into a ball of copper about this big by the time we pulled over and got out of it, all over a stupid ass radio that we didn't even put in. So look at your radio over. Like I said, a lot of guys just straight wire them, or they put too big a fuse in. I'd put a really low amp fuse in, make sure the wiring's good, start at 5 amps maybe on just a stick-in radio, and if it blows, then you can think about going to 7.5 or 10 or whatever. But you always want to use common sense. These cars are older, a bunch of people got their hands in them. Obviously, that's something you need to consider. And that's pretty much it as far as the wiring. A lot of these old domestic cars got like 10, 15 other things. I've never really seen like fusible links. I've never had trouble with the alternator. Never had trouble with the alternator charging wire. Your headlights, again, you can draw a lot. You know, there's a little this, little that, but as long as you just check out those first couple of things, you should be golden. There's a really good, well-engineered car. They just slipped up a little bit with the fuse to the blower motor. Don't really understand that. That's the only one I can really think of, you know, design-wise, straight from the factory. It's weird. I've never seen that before in another car. I'm sure somebody will correct me on that. There's probably another car out there that's got that. But that's pretty much it, guys. So that's going to be part of the top 5. I've got a couple more. I've got a couple things about the gas tank and the injectors and all that. We'll get into that. But I appreciate y'all looking. Old Blue Accord. This will be part 2, I think, because it got a little long with the first one. Thanks again for looking. Over and out.